Attention crew and passengers. This is your co-pilot speaking. Your pilot is black mind, so you are not going blind and there is no power failure. You are merely experiencing the immense blackness of his proximity, and when you hear his voice, the cabin will get even darker than it is now. We will be cruising at the speed equal to the speed of light, because there is one thing that can match it, and that is darkness. You will probably be a lot darker when we arrive as well. This is normal, and your loved ones awaiting your arrival might think you spend time in the tropics. When you tell them about the pilot, they'll understand. We will taxi to the runway now, so please buckle up and prepare for a high-speed departure. Thank you for choosing Jet Black Airways.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of y'all, and peace out to the rest of you. This is your pilot, Black Mind, speaking. Thanks for choosing Jet Black Airways. Welcome to flight number BLACK. Remain seated and strapped in for a little bit because we're approaching cruising altitude and cruising speed, which, as you know, is going to equal the speed of light because it's the speed of darkness. So I'll get right to it. I'm not going to play a lot of music, giving a lot of people time to come in because of my own time constraints. The job market here looks bad. I don't know if it's going to be any different when the next semester rolls around, which is about 2 months and a week, maybe. Well, I'll come back to that. So here's the deal. As far as working abroad goes, I do have 8 years experience working and living abroad. A lot of us talk about traveling, and but more of us are talking about we're somewhere in between, and I mean the Black manosphere as a whole is somewhere in between traveling abroad and living abroad. We're discussing both, but it's not necessarily an easy transition, and that is because one thing I want people to realize is that a U.S. passport allows you to enter into many nations, but a U.S. passport does not allow you to simply go and live somewhere, let alone work in their job market and compete in the job market with the locals. Nations are welcoming of U.S. and U.K. passports and many other passports like the St. Kitts and Nevis passport or many of the European Union passports. They're welcoming of passport holders of such as visitors. That's what I want to make clear. Now, I think many European Union nations allow Brazilian passport holders, as an example, to live in Europe, but that's probably because there's some reciprocity there. There was a time when Brazil did not let U.S. citizens enter in on passports alone. You had to get visas. You could get them fairly easily. You paid, you applied and you paid, but you had to get the visa. For a long time, Brazil was one of the few nations in Latin America that did not let you just enter on a passport. And one of the reasons was that they have to get visas to go to the U.S. Chileans, last I heard, Chileans, Bahamians, and Emirati citizens can enter the United States with their passports for 3 months. They're welcome as visitors, but to live and work in the U.S., they also must get visas. Well, I don't know about Bahamians. I'm not sure. But I wanted to point this out. Working abroad does still require you to legally live and work there. And so I want many new travelers, a lot of you veterans know this, but I want many new travelers to keep this in mind. Your passports are generally welcome, but the assumption is of a visit. You still could conceivably visit a nation, make a visa run. You fly out and then back into that nation. You get another stamp at the airport. You're in good for the same length of time that you were legal the first time. Okay, thanks, A. LaRue. Thank you so much. So you can stay up to 6 months with the passport. But in the U.S., you have to have a green card, student or investment visa. So that being said, so that shows you that many nations, every nation gets to choose who it will welcome. whom it will welcome to live there and whom it will welcome to visit. But generally speaking, it takes citizenship um, to just go and work without a visa, or reciprocity, citizenship of a nation that has reciprocity with that. That's generally what the rule is. So you veteran travelers know this already, and that's great. Newbies may not be aware of this. So keep this in mind. Now, I do talk more about this in my Patreon, and this is the segue into the next subject. I cover some travel tips. I got 3 of them uploaded so far in my Patreon. There are things in my Patreon that I'm not going to place here publicly unless my Patreon passengers ask me to. Now, they ask me to do such, and generally about 2/3 of them or more ask me to do such, then I would do it. But other than that, no. It's only one tier. It's $5 to subscribe, but they are paying. And I do want to give a shout out to all of my Patreon passengers. Now they are only, we're still in the single digits, but nonetheless, I want to give a shout out to them. Patreon's not that much right now, but if it grows, then of course I'm going to restrict more content to them. And not only that, but I would also, if they do grow in terms of numbers, then of course I would do more editing, backgrounds, and maybe some animations. What's good, Simeon? But right now, I only want to have one tier for the Patreon. I'm not trying to do a bunch of tiers. Right now, I can focus on one. Now, that leads to the third thing I'm going to cover. In the U.S., in Saudi, where I'm living and working, living now. I don't know how the job market's going to turn out. I don't know if I'm having a rough time now because the job market's like this, or if it's because of the 2030 vision that the rulers have, or if it's because we're just in the middle of the semester. And when this one ends and the next one starts, people will start hiring again. I'm sure it's a combination, a nuanced combination of the 3 of these things, but I don't know to what extent each factor plays a role. Walaikum salam, Robert. I'm not sure. I did have a plan to go to another nation that does not have a high cost of living and do something entrepreneurial. I found that in order to really make it work, walaikum salam, Jaws, to really make it work, I would need about another 14 grand. So this means that I'm probably going to have to do, and it will probably take me about another 1.5 years here, just working at my former salary. About another 1.5 years here, and I probably could save up about 12 grand. As long as I don't have to blow through the savings that I already got right now, then I'd have almost enough. But at no point am I going to be able, if I wanted to, I could not. At no point am I going to be able to leave YouTube. That being said, I need to ask you guys something. And now it's about 8 of you in here. So get ready to type an answer for me. I'm doing what I can to try not to have to go back to the United States. I'm fine with visiting, but I'm not trying to have to go back to live in the United States. But if I had to go back and live in the US, tell me this, is the job market for a heterosexual Black male Muslim better now in 2022, about to turn 2023, than it was in 2014, or is it worse? Also, day-to-day life, like, just walking past police officers or driving past them, is it better now or worse now than what it was 8 years ago? Because I need to know what to prepare for. And right now, based on the way that things are looking, um, I think I have to prepare for the worst, which to me is having to go back to the U.S. I'll let you guys tell me in the chat what you think it is compared to 8 years ago. I'm giving you guys time to type it. I didn't play anything this time, but if you all want some music to help you think, then I guess you just have to tell me and I'll start to play some. It wasn't my initial plan, but and you guys tell me in the chat what you think would happen. How bad would that be? If you in my shoes, um, and you simply can't find um, a worthwhile salary here, and your savings are short, or they make a business, they make your entrepreneurial idea risky, even in a lower cost of living nation. Um, what would you all do? All right, Jaws gave one answer. Oh, what's happening in Ancient Man? Hope everything's going okay. Um, okay, so Jaws says it depends on the area. Um, now, I guess what I want to know is, uh, can you make enough? Guess that's the other thing I'm wondering. Can you guys get by with the price of gas there? From what I'm hearing, I don't know if it's still in the I don't know if it's still in the $7 range like it was, but um, I would need to know that too as well. Oh, thanks for asking. Thanks for asking, an ancient man. I'm gonna put that in here for you. Thanks a million. From the bottom of my black heart and the depths of my black mind. Okay. So A. LaRue says the southern US is okay. Um, Simeon would recommend going back, but that's the thing. I want you guys to think back to 2014 because that's when I left. Is it better now in 2022 than it was in 2014? Because uh, I'm really not sure what to expect. Now, as far as universities go, I don't have a PhD, and I would only go more in debt if I decided to get one. And if I decided to get another PhD, I'd just be more heavily in debt. Um, I would have to get a PhD in another nation anyway, and that would mean living abroad without being able to work until finishing school, because a student visa is different from a work visa. Oh, God, mercy. I swear I can't multitask. All right, let's see here. So I guess if they have these language institutes in these universities or language departments, ESL departments, then maybe so. Maybe I could, but I don't know. Some of them have it, but I don't know what I'm not sure if they take people with masters in experience or if they demand a PhD. Um, if, okay, hold on. That is scary because I'm not sure how much I stand out visually. Probably not much, but I can say that there are certain principles I have to stand on. Um, I try to pray within the proper time window. And that reminds me, the only time I ever had a good job in the United States in my entire adult life, um, I would pray within the time window of the prayers, but I didn't even tell anybody what my faith was. But corporate white folks, and when you're living and working away from home and away from your family, and you're not cheating, they start to look at you like something suspicious. And especially if you don't drink, you're a black man, and you do. Without me telling them I was Muslim, I was a black man. Didn't let them crack N-word jokes without firing back, and I wasn't trying to cheat and didn't. I'm not saying it to boast or brag. I'm just saying that I didn't do it. And of course, didn't drink as well. I think I mentioned that. So eventually, some of them, I found out later that somebody figured it out. Now, I couldn't prove that that was one of the reasons I got laid off, because I would have sued them if that was the case. Now, in this case, do you mean a grade school traveler, or are you referring to a college or university? I'm just curious, Jaws. Ancient man, thank you so much. It doesn't show up yet, but thank you so much anyway. Even if it doesn't show, I appreciate it. Um, what's happening, CJ? One of my Patreon passengers. All right, so I've considered that, a LaRue. The only thing is that Europe is expecting an abnormally cold winter, and that would include the UK. I'm not gonna lie, that's one thing I know could do me in as far as my health goes. That could harm my health, especially after 8 years of not having to deal with a real true winter. Um, okay, K through 12, gotcha. And you know what? I taught that back when I lived in the States, and them little kids were terrible. See, when you're a heterosexual black male, Muslim or not, and you go into teaching K through 12, this is what happens. They give you the worst class. Now, if you became a teacher long enough ago to where you're grandfathered in and you got tenure, then they can't just fire you for nothing. But if you came in after a particular point, probably about the late 90s, I guess, if you came in after that, they didn't have tenure. So they would just get with, and they probably still do it. Matter of fact, someone said they did that. Dr. Tia San Johnson said that. You a black male teacher in grade school, they give you the worst class, the worst students. You don't have any special privileges to discipline them. Then they turn around and they say that you didn't do it. And either you burn out, or they just fire you, or they just don't renew your contract for the coming year. Okay, all right. Mr. Hero says it's even worse. And I'm gonna tell y'all now, I could not make it. 8 years ago, I could not make it in the United States. It just wasn't possible. Could not. Um, I didn't know how much longer I had till I was going to become homeless when I was living in the States. But the job offer to work here came. It came in time to where I was able to avoid it. And to be honest with you, I was paid so little, even working 3 jobs altogether. I was paid so little that I had to turn to the mosque for them to help me with 2 fees. Here I was with a master's degree, having to ask the mosque to help uh, like a common beggar. At least I was able to say these are 2 fees associated with getting a visa, and they could see what that was about. So I don't know if I could have, but I don't know what to expect. I mean, honestly, gentlemen, I am terrified of having to go back stateside. Hopefully, I don't have to, but I got to prepare in case I do. To be honest with you, I've had nightmares about it. Let's see here. All right. Now, this Robert Campbell, go ahead on with your bad self. Now, can I ask if it tends to work? I mean, if you have experience doing this, you probably learned what they ask for to prove the case. But I'll ask if that tends to work, if that tends to pay off. Because in all honesty, I wouldn't mind retaining a lawyer ahead of time. I would use some of my savings. If I didn't have a choice, I wouldn't mind using a bit of my savings to retain a lawyer, and I would just keep all kinds of paperwork. But most employers really do their best to hide that stuff. They do what they can to hide it. Um, all right, Mr. Hero says that depends on where you are. Now, let's say if I guess I live in either on the Gulf Coast or at least in the same states as the Gulf Coast. I might have to live somewhat inland in some of those states. Um, I wouldn't try to go to too big of a city. I mean, I wouldn't try to live in Atlanta again unless a good job just landed in my lap, which never happens in Atlanta and never did and never will, as far as I can tell. I wouldn't try to live there again. That was just bad. That sucked. Um, that was some of the worst. And peace, not Maisie. So I wouldn't try that again. Um, no, no, that's not even feasible. Um, I would visit my parents, but I wouldn't try to live there either. Even if I paid rent and the property taxes. Um, Pops is old school. He's just like, no, you visit, but that's it. And the funny thing is, when I visit, sometimes Pops would say to me, even though I would be visiting while I'm living here, my dad would say to me, "Hey, yo, Black." Well, he doesn't talk quite like that, but he would say, "Black, they need teachers on Indian reservations. What, I'm supposed to live away from my own people completely? Um, and which reservations? Because if you're talking about for what they call the five civilized tribes, I don't want nothing to do with them. Now, if you're talking about somebody's more revolutionary and Massa don't like them, then I would take them however they take me. But I know they got gang problems on them reservations. I know the Navajo reservation that spans the four corner states. I know they got a gang problem. They had it back in 1996. Um, okay, well, in that case, then Robert, I hope you manage to win. If they're really doing it, then I hope you manage to win. All right, A. LaRue, um, I could understand why you feel that way. I probably wouldn't. I'm sure I wouldn't go that far, not while a bunch of people in it, but I understand why, because it is a very frustrating place to live. And I'll say this: years ago, I used to say that when sisters moved to Atlanta, they would move with a plan. They would have some kind of license, like a cosmetology license from their home state, and they would see if there's reciprocity or some sort of professional license that would be recognized in Georgia. And then they would move and they'd have a plan to stay with their girl or somebody until they got their own roof and their own feet. And at the very least, they would bring a working car into Atlanta and some sort of plan. And brothers would just leave New York and New Jersey and just catch a bus or drive down in a bucket, jump out the car when they got to Atlanta and say, where do I sign up? And then find themselves begging. I used to think that's what was going on. But then I began to realize that what was really happening was that even if what I said was true, what was going on is that when you would get to Atlanta, you were Black and heterosexual and male. You just weren't preferred. And I didn't know that this was something that was going on all over the states because, see, like I said, I left the U.S. in 2014, early 2014. I mean, before January was out, I was already over here. But later on, I remember, same year, 2014, about March, April, when it was getting hot in this country, when it was warming up in this country, I read this study that showed that if you were Black and male and you were not into women, you were non-AY, that you did not face job discrimination. Not in any stage. You didn't face it in the application stage, the interview, nor even in salary, nor promotion. That's what I found out. This was in a study. And when I told one of the locals here about it, he was one of the he was a local here that had studied in the United States. As a matter of fact, he transferred from a PWI to a HBCU when he was studying in the US. Um, so you could he missed his homies back at the HBCU. So when I came and I lived in his city, he was just like, man, I'm glad to meet you, because he was, in a sense, he was kind of homesick for for our people, much the same way I was. But when I told him about this, I remember we were walking one evening. I told him, and he stopped walking. He was so shocked. And he said, "You mean they got proof for this now?" And I said, "Well, they got a study, if you want to call it proof." And then he said, "Man, that's war. They're at war with you." That was what he said. That was 2014. Um, yeah, that's very true. Right, this right here, Mr. Hero. Um, the Gulf states in general are like that, and Atlanta is worse. I mean, when I got to the Gulf to teach, and I don't mean this Gulf here, I mean the Gulf of Mexico. When I got to the Gulf Coast, USA, to teach for about a semester, kids are bad, but one phone call, mom, grandmom, or both, and possibly dad, stepdad, and granddad would show up. So they weren't completely unsupervised, and they would get right for about an average of 10 days. So at least they were more corrigible on the Gulf Coast, but they were still bad. But in Atlanta, they were terrible. In Atlanta, they were darn near subhuman. Um, I talked once about, I actually did a upload about that when I was roasting this idea of a black-brown coalition as a collective. I was talking about how bad the kids were whose parents came from Mexico, and then the other kids whose parents came from Central America, and they wanted to be like the Mexicans. Some of the Salvadorians and Hondurans. I had to talk about that because I had to tell the parents in Spanish when we had parent-teacher conferences. I had to tell them in Spanish, this is what's not going to happen. Don't tell me you're afraid to hit the kid. I don't care if they're going to call 911 and get you expelled or what. I don't care. They deport you, fine. Because we got sold away from our people when we got brought to this country. And if it wasn't for us, you wouldn't want to live here, and you wouldn't be able to. So you hit them if you have to. But if they come in my class and they act up again, I will dial ICE, and y'all will get split up. And that's the end of it. And that's not open for negotiation. And the funny thing is, when I said this, not one of them reported me for telling them this, because technically you weren't supposed to say that to a parent. However, I didn't need a translator to talk to them. So I just told him directly in Spanish, if your kid comes and behaves for the rest of the year, even if he fails, but he behaves the rest of the year, I make no phone calls. But if he comes in and if he interrupts me in the middle of a sentence after I've met you, that's it. Just that. Slightest disrespect. Yeah, ICE, yeah, I got an address of somebody, and they've admitted that they don't have papers. I think the kids do, but the parents don't. And that's what it took. But the thing was, the kids were out, this was middle school too. They were fresh out of control, specifically because the parents were afraid to hit them. Specifically because of that. That's why they were so much worse than our kids back on the Gulf Coast. Because grandma come to school with mama. Mama hold you down, grandma whip your butt in front of the other students, and then they switch places. And then you snivel, and you remember that blubbering sound you make when you were a kid and you crying and you can barely breathe, and your bottom lip's going in and out. Y'all remember that? Yeah, that's what happened at the school that back in my hometown. So, all right, let's see here. Robert says you with the right kind of contract work. Wait, okay, the last sentence I didn't quite understand. Interested in, okay, I think if it means what I think, then no, I better not go back. Absolutely not. I would do that, Snuggles. I drop it. Problem is, I'm going to be out in a little bit anyway, because I'm going to have to answer this phone call I got, and I also got to follow up on another job lead. Matter of fact, my prior email address, I sold it because the guy's first name actually um, um, matched with that name. Um, so he was working here too. He might still be actually, but he can't get me a job if he is. So I went ahead and just sold the email address to him. But he forwarded something to me and he said, "Is this somebody that you know? Because this is a job link." And it was Abdullah bin Bobby that sent it. So I got to follow up on that lead because he just forwarded it to me a little while ago. Um, so I still got stuff I got to do. I got a lot I got to figure out. And I don't know. I don't know if I even can. Um, I may not be able to. That's why I'm worried about the possibility of having to go back stateside. Other thing too was that it's 6 here now, and I'm trying not to stay up too late because um, I'm having trouble sleeping. But unfortunately, it means I wind up having to sleep longer. Last 2 nights, I didn't get a good sleep um, because of the worry and the anxiety. And I'll tell you what it's like. See, back stateside, I noticed that if a job was crap, of course I could get it. If the location was bad, or if they just didn't pay well, or if it was both, I could get those gigs. But I always had to be overqualified. It's just like the mating market you guys are in. You got to be overqualified for a woman that brings nothing to the table. And as a matter of fact, just she ruins the quality of the table just by being there. That's what it's like. That's what the job market was like for me when I lived there. And then when I got here, it was not like that. Now, granted, I kept the same job for 8 years. You cannot do that in the States. It's not allowed. You black heterosexual and male, and then on top of that, Muslim. No, if they don't know you Muslim, they ain't gonna let you stay there for no 8, 9 years. Um, but here, at least when I inquired about some jobs several years ago, the only thing that stopped me was that my residency permit at that time, my employer was not going to agree to transfer. And that was something they could do back then. It's a little bit less strict now, but back then they could do that. Your employer could say, "I'm not going to agree to let your residency transfer to someone else without you. Here's the deal. We'll give you a final exit visa. You take your butt back home and you start the application process for a new job all over again. Send your passport to the embassy again for that visa, and then you come back over here." That's what they were doing back then, if they wanted to do that out of spite. And my company was one of them. And that was the only thing that stopped me from being able to just jump to another gig when I wanted. Now, it's the same thing here. If there's a good job and they need someone and I interview and they want me, I'll still get some message later, "Oh, we froze hiring. We got everybody." Or, "You know what? It was a day late." Something like that. It's always that. And this, I'm talking, they want you. The job interview goes good. They're asking, "When can you start?" And all that. And then it's like they decide, "Well, wait a minute. He's willing to work, so something must be wrong with him." But then if it's crap, if it's a bad salary, a bad location, or any combination, oh, they'll hit me up. One guy tried to get me to start work the following Sunday with no interview. Problem was, it was in this little Bedouin jerkwater town. It wasn't too far from Riyadh, but it was one of them areas. No train. You just there in the desert. And I thought, you know what? I put my time in places like that to not have to go back to places like that. And my employer even tried to put me in my current, I wouldn't say employer, but my current sponsor, used to be employer. They've offered me 3 times the same position, and it's the only one I told them don't offer me. I told them, "You could send me anywhere but that, but if you keep offering me that, I'm gonna keep refusing." And they call back 2 times more. "Will you take this location?" No. 17 hours by bus from where I currently live. My wife still lives here and works here, and you want me to live a 17-hour bus ride each way from her? Man, F y'all. And that's how we got. That's part of how we got this far now. But what I'm saying is it's gotten to the point where it's gotten to the point now where it's just like the U.S. job market for a black man. It's just the same. It's exactly the same. It's like, okay, so this one is good and you qualify, but that would be too good for you. So no, we ain't gonna take you, even if we wanted to. But we got this crap gig over here. You'll be making a half to 2/3 what you usually made and are supposed to still make. And you'll be working exactly where no one else wants to work. And see, that's what's scary about it. That's what's messed up. Because honestly, gentlemen, y'all don't know this, but the discrimination that you face in the job market and the stress that it causes is not normal. And you won't know it until you live and work in another job market that's not going to do this to you. That's when you find out how bad you had it over there. It's the same thing with the mating market. When you leave, you find out how bad you got it right now where you are. That's what happened with Austin. I understand the corollary in Austin Holloman's case. It wasn't the job market that really did him in. He was making 10 grand a month as a barber because he was that skilled at what he was doing. But he saw the treatment he was getting, and you can't start a family under those conditions when you're ready to, because the only experience you're going to get is experience being ill-treated. And women have a way of knowing which guys other women have treated bad in the past. I don't know how they know, but they know. So once they smell that on you, they're going to turn and do the same thing. Melanie King said it. So then you finally leave, you go somewhere where they're not even sniffing to see if that's what it was. And then you get treated better. That's what happened. That's what happened with Austin. But the job market was like that for me. I got over here and found that, hey, you know what? It's not, man, it really is that bad stateside, and it's not bad over here. And then now it's starting to look like that. And so worst thing for me would be to have to go back stateside to live and have to try to find a job there. That scares me. To be honest with you, twice I prayed for death before that happens. Not to visit. Got family. I'll be glad to see them. But to spend more than 5 weeks there at a time, it gets bothersome. It's usually that 5th week when I'm visiting, it's that 5th week that it really starts to eat away at me. And so that's why I'm reaching out. I'm really just trying to get some info and some strategies from you guys. Well, some knowledge, first of all, as to really how bad it is compared to what it was. Because if I ask you how bad it is, I want you to know what comparison I'm trying to make. You might say, it's okay. I mean, it's all right. But see, I understand. I know it's bad. I know how bad it was because I came here where it's not that bad at all. Or it wasn't. That's why I asked you compare it to 2014. That's why I said this to y'all. Because, man, if you say it's all right, but you're talking about what it was like back in 98, that's still bad. I just didn't know exactly how bad because I hadn't lived anywhere else back then. But do prepare for that. When you get ready to finally leave in terms and live somewhere else, do prepare. Try to get a skill set, not just a skill, but a skill set, so that you got a skill and then a backup. Do try that. Absolutely. And if you can find a foreign means of income, that's even better. But anyway, y'all hit up the for certain travel tips, of which there are 3. Go ahead and hit up the Patreon. I have to reserve some of these things for them. I got one that's designed to help you get through security more quickly and remain organized. Because most of the time people lose things in security from pulling things out the pocket. So I give you a tip on how to avoid that. I uploaded Malice as a Motive on here for everybody. But if you go to the Patreon, I got a part two, and that's why I tell you about a particular. I tell you about something that's already in the process right now, and uh, it's going to develop, and you're going to see it. It's bad, but if you know about it, it won't do anything to you. And then after that, I got travel tips 2 and 3. Um, if I do have to go back stateside, I still would do this YouTube, absolutely. But I'd probably step it up until I found something else. And I would start to monetize more, because if I am back stateside, then they can send me the AdSense at a US address easily. Then I would get it, and then I would monetize this, both in AdSense, but also, I'm not gonna lie, if I had to be stateside, I would be hitting y'all up for cash apps more. Absolutely, I'd have to, because of the expense that everything incurs over there. Look at that. I'm not the only one. The funny thing is, that's Europe. They told me about different things that are happening in Europe, protests, but usually it's no, actually, no. I heard about some protests in Western Europe. So if that's what's going on, but he's willing to hold off for 2 more years, what does that tell me about the States? Huh. All right. I guess I better leave it be then. But yeah, anybody listening to the playback, feel free to come to chime in the comments, and also let me know there what region of the country you're talking about, and how good or bad it is compared to 2014. Assalamu alaikum, Abdullah bin Bobby. Actually, that email address I sold because there was a teacher here that he goes by that, at least that first name. So sold it to him, and I sold the Odyssey account that I had under that. So he's got that. But he did send me those links in my new email. He asked if you were someone I knew, and I told him, yeah, I appreciate that. So that's the thing. That's why I'm not staying long on this, Abdullah. I'm about to try to follow up on them now. And my wife's going to get back in a short time. So I'm going to give her the chance to do the follow-up with me right now at the same time. Because he was talking about couples, which is good. But yeah, that's where I am now. Scared to go back, and hoping and praying that I don't have to. So to all the Muslims listening, supplicate that I don't have to go back, and that I don't have to take worse than what I had previously, because that's what they're trying to do here. The only difference is this: here, if they're going to do that, they're doing it to everybody, across the board. What's going on, Chaos? Whereas over there stateside, as you guys know, no matter how bad Massa has it, they want to make sure that we have it worse. So whatever they're going through, we catch it even worse. Here, they'll do that to anyone, period. Your nationality is more likely to play a role in what you experience in the job market than your race ever will. And as a matter of fact, at that in that little jerkwater town that my current sponsor keeps trying to offer me, even though this is illegal, yeah, I have considered that. I've considered that, but I also understand that that would take a long time. As far as I know, I know nothing at this point about it. Nothing. I don't even understand most of the vocabulary. So I would literally be starting from nothing. I don't know how feasible that is, because I got certain bills I got to take care of every month, no matter where I live, and I can't afford any breaks. Can't take any breaks in them. But yeah, of course I've considered it. I just don't know enough to even make an educated decision about how to do it. But yeah, in that jerkwater town that they kept offering me, I found out that the administrators there are actually letting Saudi professors break the rules and they're not questioning them. And that they just went ahead and exempted them from the same policies that everybody else has to, by which everyone else must abide. So you have about somewhere between 4 to 6 hours of teaching on average, but everybody's got to be there for 8. And if the students don't have, if there are days when the students don't have class, you still got to show up just because. But they went ahead and just exempted the salaries. Wait a minute. So with no difference in pay, they just simply don't have to work as much. That's it. That's what's going. That's what's going on. Yeah, that's what they're doing. Even though that's not legal, they're doing that. Now they're probably going to get busted at some point, but based on the distance that this place is from the urban belt that runs through the middle of the country, they're probably going to get away with it for a while. And then one day somebody from the central government's going to go and check in and discover this and find out who's doing it. And then they're either going to fire someone or arrest them for corruption. But I don't know how long that's going to take. And but that's what they're doing. But it's not based on being black. That's one of the things that I do enjoy about here. Even if they do us wrong, it's not because of that. And I don't tolerate it, even if it is not. But you can lose your job too. And the thing is, while you can get them into criminal trouble if you can prove that they did something wrong, that doesn't mean necessarily that you could sue, and you still could lose your job. Now, you could later you probably will be able to sue, but you have to sustain financial damages to do it. And the thing is, you still got to pay an attorney. So if you financially damage, how you going to pay an attorney? And that's what messes it up. So yeah, that's the gist of it. So y'all let me know what to expect in the event that the worst happens and I got to go relocate back stateside. And if you didn't type it in the chat fast enough, feel free to tell me in comments. That being said, that's really about it. I've taken long enough, and thank y'all for being patient with me. I'll keep y'all posted. And no matter where I do wind up, I still plan to give more advice on living and traveling abroad, no matter what. But as a matter of fact, if I have to go back stateside, I will probably kick out more, both for you here and on Patreon about that, while my memory of it is still fresh, because I won't know how long it's going to take for me to find something abroad to where I can go and live abroad again. Let's see here. Yep. Anti-black male disrespect is much worse. If that's what's going on, Mr. Hero, then if that's what's going on, then I guess I'll just find a place to go and stay there illegally and work under the table, because that's not acceptable. If people are doing that, that means they're getting away with it, and watching them get away with it that's just not acceptable. So thank you guys for the information you have given me, and I'll check back in comments to see what people who listen to the playback can contribute as well. So that being said, you are now free to unbuckle your seatbelts and move around the cabin at your leisure. Thank you so much for listening. As always, Black Heart, Black Mind, Black Out. Assalamu alaikum. And black, heterosexual, non-select, male power, just because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction of Judgment Day.